Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Talking about local government, you guys, how about a $275,000 a year job that nobody in Australia wants? Huh?
Well, what is it?
Well, it's gazetted.
CEO of Burnside Council?
No, it's gazetted. It's there. The Remuneration Tribunal said it is important to find the right candidate for the job. Furthermore, to place a candidate with lesser experience in the role would be a challenging and a risk to the council. Now, I'll tell you what it is. The tribunal has recognised that the District Council of Coober faces unique regional and locational challenges together with additional responsibilities which are not generally associated with local government functions. Such challenges increase the level of complexity for the CEO's role and the degree of risk associated with the recruitment decision. District Council of Coober has been a defaulting council since January 2019, and since then administrators have been overlooking the function, but they are still trying to find the right candidate. $275,000 a year for the job of being the district council. I guess that would be like a mayor or in charge of the...
Well, CEO, I would
The
imagine.
CEO.
The mayor doesn't get that sort of dough.
No, I think that's that could be a standard rate, because I think the Burnside CEO gets that amount.
Well...
So it's probably a standard thing across the state.
Yeah, well, I don't know what we do.
Well, it was in the this morning's advertiser, the Remuneration Tribunal figures for the various fat cats here in South Australia. Malinowskis, as Chief of Staff, is now on $760,000 a year. And the Chief of Health, SA Health, she's on almost $700,000 a year.
Well, does anybody ask why, or is it just because it's public money, it's open slather?
Well, one of the things that always has amazed me is that the remuneration of our elected members, politicians, and these senior bureaucrats, and bureaucrats in general, are set by the Remuneration Tribunal. And typically, and Tony will back me up on this, whenever you look at an annual report for a company, there's always this line about the shareholders accepting the remuneration report. And I typically would always vote against that because I don't like the crap they put in there. And usually the stuff they put in there is that the CEO and certain executives in the company are getting all these extra bonuses beyond their base salaries. They're already extremely well covered. And I point directly at Qantas and I point directly at Alan Joyce. He left the company in disarray, and the shareholders are still paying for him and still will pay for him.
As are the travellers as well.
Yeah, but the shareholders, he's still getting dough, and he's getting all this now for whatever period of time or rest of his life, free travel. And you say, this is the gift that keeps on giving. And you say to yourself, where is the performance criteria? And it's the same with the CEOs that run councils. Where is the performance criteria?
Well, funny, with Alan Joyce, I have a little bit of inside knowledge with Qantas. The day he turned up in 2008, the whole staff morale of the organisation went down. And I know someone who ran a particular department, and everyone was so pissed off with him.
Why? What was the reason?
Oh, he's just a bad person to work under. He was probably a bully or whatever, and that issue rippled through to the whole brand value of the organisation over time. Yeah. But so I've heard that directly from people within Qantas.
And talking about bully, the controversy now surrounding Channel 9, and these people who have been bullies and harassing people look like they're going to walk away scot-free, unnamed and unshamed. I mean, I think that's ludicrous. I mean, the women and the men, and because also men who have been harassed and bullied, they should go to Slater and Gordon, one of those organisations who are prepared to fight a class action, and take Channel 9 to the cleaners. Absolutely. I mean, if this has been ripe for years upon years, and you and I, Jeremy, were talking about this morning that, it can't be a cultural thing. Well, yes, it can be a cultural thing. If top management has basically swept these issues underneath the carpet, they've made a decision to, create a smokescreen or hide the evidence, and that should be another culpable issue.
Do you remember when Eddie Maguire was CEO of Channel 9 some years ago?
Yeah.
And he was outed for behind closed doors making very rude comments about using crude terms like boning some woman in terms of sacking her or something, and that got leaked out. And that's the sort of thing that's been there for probably 10, 15 years, whenever he was around.
Yeah. Well, you can't have that sort of thing going on unless there's a conspiracy of silence or there is a determination by the board to look the other way.
But if we go back to the fundamentals of this conversation starting, the experience that some of these politicians and bureaucrats have is no experience in the real world. And this is the problem, I think. The three of us at the table this morning, we have been in the private sector. We know that we have to perform or had to perform in our jobs, and that if the balance sheet's not right, you can't run a negative balance sheet. You have to run it at a positive level, whereas governments and bureaucracies are able to
They don't care.
go into the red. And Victoria is just one of those prime examples where the government has run that state
Into
completely
the ground.
more than dry, not just empty.
Well, the news this morning from Victoria is that bankruptcies are up 56%. 56%, that's not 56%, that's up 56%.
When you kill off your industry, which is the engine of all that income, you're never going to pay down the debt because you've created such a big hole. You've then destroyed the industry that will get you out of that hole through taxes and activity and
But moreover, in the practical sense, if you were wanting to build something in Victoria for the government, you would be extremely reticent and reluctant to do that because you'd probably say to yourself, we won't get paid because they haven't got the money. So what can the government of Victoria in the future build, because the contractors will just stay more than arm's length away. We had that same situation here with when Kevin Foley was financing here. When they built, for example, the Marion Aquatic Centre, there were tradesmen who put their hard-earned into materials and labour to build that place, and then they weren't being paid. And if they were ever paid, it was months and months after the deadline. And this is what...
Well, the government has always been a bad payer.
Yes.
And I don't know how they get it.
But it shouldn't be.
Well, no, it should be the other way around. They should be exemplary.
And the principle here is that in private enterprise you can't get away with that because you will go bankrupt and you will be then taken to the cleaners and foreclosed.
Isn't it interesting, if you, the government talking about paying their bills late, if you pay your bill one day late, whether it be a rego or a council rate or whatever, they penalise you. They penalise you, and it's some ridiculous amount not proportionate to the actual time delay.
With regard to the...
it's always one-sided, isn't it?
Channel 9, well, it's more than, of course, Channel 9. It's Channel 9, The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald...
2GB?
2GB, 3AW, 4BC, 6PR. It's a very big media organisation. I don't exactly know who it is. I think it's perhaps a venture capitalist. You know how they come and they buy up
I think it's
things?
Isn't it on the stock market?
Oh, it would have to be on the stock market.
So I'd say it's listed, I think.
Okay, all right.
It might have been venture at one time.
And they floated
it. And then the bunnies...
Yeah, but it is...
the losses going
it is the premier media company in the whole country. Anyway, the best guy to talk to about the media is a fellow called Peter Cox. Now, I've talked to him over the years. He's going to join us at about 10:15. So we'll have a word with him about it.
And this controversy is not a trifling matter. We're not talking about, one person. It's not like a Brittany Higgins in Parliament House in Canberra, one person lodging a complaint. We're talking, and it's interesting too that Richard Marles' deputy...
Oh, yes, Peter Cox is confirmed. Good, thank you.
Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister, also has a...
Not a pretty sight.
Well, just looking at the share price for...
Channel 9.
What's the company? Is it Bain? The company that owns the whole
Well,
lot?
it's on the stock market now, so it's now a publicly listed company.
But what's the name of the company?
It's called NEC, Nine Entertainment Company Holdings
Oh,
Limited.
I see, okay.
And the ASX code is NEC.
Okay, right.
So, from what I understand, the complainants or complaints themselves in this report enumerate to almost 1,000. So we're talking about a extremely widespread problem that they've allowed to generate within their organisation, and to the tune of half the population of the staff. So it's a massive, massive problem for them, and for people to almost at this stage look like they're just going to walk away from it without any further examination or charges is, I think, just absolutely insane.
Well, this is hard on the heels of a lot of sackings that went on with the Nine Entertainment Group. And I think that was probably because of the social media deciding that they weren't going to pay media outlets for their information. And that really hurt. That was hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes. Yeah.
But television, it's a strange thing. For as long as I have been involved and known and had contact with, it has been boom and bust and boom and bust. It's never plain sailing.
Well,
There's always a crisis.
And look, it's very, very contingent on sponsorship, and it's very contingent on sport. And if you look at the major stations here in Australia, things like the Commonwealth Games or the Olympic Games, Australian rules football, the tennis, they are extremely large, generating revenue streams for these commercial enterprises. And if they miss out, or when they tender for it, if they miss out, it's a big thing. But fundamentally, I believe that the people in Channel 9 who are responsible for all this bad behaviour should be held to account. And it's like also, if you think about the Brittany Higgins matter, which is a close issue to you because you lost your employment from that, you as a conservative person, and if it were the same situation now, if the Liberals were in... Well, let's go back, rewind. When Scott Morrison went to Hawaii, which is entitled to have his annual leave with his family, an issue of timing, sure. It's like the Prime Minister buying a cliffside holiday home for $4.5 million with the stamp duty.
And worse than that, putting $100 million of taxpayers' money into upgrading the road that leads to his front
I wish
frigging gate.
I wish I was Prime Minister. I could have a driveway like that. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity. So,
but how brazen.
Horrible bad timing.
God, yeah.
But here we have, a week ago, Richard Marles had a controversy in his own office with his Chief of Staff. And because he's Labor and not a Conservative, it's now old news. Well, hang on. Let's turn the soil over and dig a bit deeper into this. It's a bit cute for Richard Marles now to say, it's the lawyers are handling this and I'm not going to make any further comment. Well, what about the media shoving the knife into him like they did Scott Morrison? Like if it was any Conservative person, you would have the knife shoved
Well, I'm afraid that media...
Not only shoved in, you'd have the knife twisted.
Twisted, yes. Yeah. And not forget to rub in a bit of salt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.